Hey, welcome to Onward Lebanon. This is part 2 in a series about administrative discussion on a recent decision to limit cell phone use for students at Lebanon High School. I'm joined in this episode by Lebanon Junior High Principal Alex Brunk. Welcome, Mr. Brunk.
Hey, how you
I'm
doing?
going to call you Alex if that's all right
That
for
works.
this discussion.
That works.
Little dad talk today. And Berry Intermediate Assistant Principal, Tiffany Martin. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you.
I am so impressed by the conversations we have that are just real, right? And I'm hoping to just share that with our community as well, right? One of the things that you and I, Tiffany, talk about is our kids say, like, nobody else has these rules. I don't like these rules. Nobody, people do, right? And I want to share a little bit with our families today. Like, I am no way I'm a parenting expert, right? I screw it up all the time. I don't think I have it all together. But I do think in this area, I've got some things that I would want parents and families to hear. And so, we just have a conversation here. 3 cool parents just hanging out in the basement at the Lebanon Electric Building talking about cell phones. And so what does it look like to set boundaries, to regularly talk to your kids about it? I want to be a little bit real here. Like, what is it in terms of your home and your kids that you have on your phone? So we got some questions, but feel free to share more outside of that if something comes to mind. Alex, and you and your wife, you have several children. What are the ages of those kids, and when did you introduce cell phones at your house?
So I've got 5 kids at home. I've got an 7-year-old, 2 9-year-olds, and 2 14-year-olds. And the 2 14-year-olds are the only ones that have cell phones. The 3 little boys do have devices, but those are just your typical iPads that they can play games with periodically throughout the day. Now thinking about this after our previous conversation, I'm like, this is a slippery slope just right over to phones and iPhones. And even one of my 9-year-olds is like, when do I get my phone? It's like, not anytime soon.
Yeah.
So did you ask?
Yeah, your 14-year-old kids, when did they first get cell phones? What was that like? What went into that decision?
Yeah, it was in 7th grade. And it was basically peer pressure from the parents' side of things. Like, well, everybody else is having their kids get cell phones going into junior high. We probably should keep up with the times, because we felt like, our kids are going to be the odd ones out at school. Not the best parenting, but we knew very quickly, like, if we are going to do this, we need to make sure that we're like with the times, with what the trends are, what the expectations are. These are my first kids, so I did not know what to do. What to expect. I'm in a men's group on Wednesday nights where 6 of us get together throughout the year, and we just try to figure out how to be better husbands and better fathers, better men in general. And one of the guys has some older kids, and he kind of walked through kind of what he does, which was super helpful. So I think the first step for us was like, how do we manage this? And we had to like lean on some folks that have been there before, which was important for Allison and I. With those 2.
So Tiffany, your boys, what are their ages? When did they get cell phones? What was that decision like in your home?
So I have a 16-year-old boy and an almost 14-year-old boy. And we were more lenient with the first because, similar to Alex, we had never done that before. And so my oldest got his phone. We told him he had to keep his grades up for the first quarter of 7th grade and show us he could be responsible with his activities and grades before we would get him one. So they both followed that trend. They got him after the first quarter of 7th grade. But what they were allowed to have on them has been different.
Yeah. So in our house, Emily and I, we have a 16-year-old daughter, 14-year-old son, and 12-year-old son. And so, when we made this decision, it was similar to you, Alex, like we held out for a while. And our kids got them in a little bit earlier than yours. We decided it was like Christmas of their 6th grade year, right? Sort of that middle of 6th grade year. They were 12. They were kind of being more responsible in some ways. Looking back at it now, probably I think I would have waited a little bit longer.
Same.
And we moved to Lebanon 3 years ago, and we were much more comfortable sort of leaving. Owen was a 10-year-old. There were things that were happening with us coming and going. And so we always started sort of with that house phone, right? The old cell phone that stayed at the house in the event of an emergency. Did you guys have that?
Yeah.
That was accessible for kids if they needed an emergency, only made phone calls. But we ended up going with an Apple Watch for Owen for 2 years. didn't have the ability to get on social media, had the ability to text and call. And I think if I were to do it all over again, I think I would have probably waited a little bit longer on a smartphone and done something less powerful for that first phone for them. So, waiting, right? There's this trends now that as people are seeing the impact of cell phones, we've talked a little bit about it already, but like that Wait Till 8th campaign, pushes cell phones out until 14. Because I think that's where the research is starting to show that the brain development can handle that a little bit more at that time. But also then waiting until 16 for social media. And because of some of those things in the teenage, junior high years of bodies changing, living up to what they see on the internet and social media compared to what's real. Yeah. And so, if you're looking for, if you're a parent out there, you're saying like, when do I give my kid their cell phone, right? It's the discussion we're all having. We all have older parents we talk to about these things. I think there's some really good tools out there on the conversations to know whether your kids are ready. And the lessons that we've learned a little bit as older parents with our kids that we do differently now with the youngest one. So talking about social media, when did you allow your kids to get social media? Was there a specific time? Was it as soon as they got their phone? What was that for you guys?
So different, like I said, for both. My oldest, we really had a no social media rule for a while. We did eventually let him get, I think, Instagram first. And then just depending if he's on his phone too much and we can see a change in his mood, he's got phone brain, we call it, we'll have a conversation with him and remove it or limit the time. But we try to include him as a 16-year-old in that conversation because, in a couple of years, he's going to be out of our house and I'm assuming I'll not be blocking Instagram from his phone at that time. So we try to make sure we're having that conversation with what do you think is a reasonable amount of time to be on social media? And he's said to us an hour. And so that's what he's at times allowed to have. We've never allowed either of our kids to have Snapchat. They will not graduate school with Snapchat in our house, but that's just because I don't see a lot of good from it very often. So, and my youngest does not have social media. He did try Be Real, but as luck had it, when he got a new device, it quit working. So I didn't even have to be the bad guy on that one.
Yeah, it was like the safe introduction into it, right? Yeah. Well, you laughed at Be Real, Alex.
Be Real, a couple issues at school with Be Real.
Yeah, it's changed a lot since it first came out. It was pretty simple at first, and of course now it has all the more addictive qualities to it. So both of my boys are pretty over that one, but as far as Snapchat and TikTok, they're not on those still.
Okay. How about you?
So social media was 8th grade. And Allison and I had the conversation that they're not going to get social media until we are ready to parent the social media usage. And if we're not ready, then they're not getting it. And probably looking back, we probably should have said that with cell phones too. If you're not ready to parent the cell phone, don't give it to them yet, because you obviously just can't let them have it wild, wild west. A lot of adults can't handle it, let alone 13-year-olds. So it was in 8th grade. Like Tiffany, our kids do not have Snapchat. They will not get Snapchat. Our kids have to justify why they want their social media. And so like for Snapchat, they can't justify it because the flip side is we'll just text. Mm-hmm. Right, you can do everything that you want to. With
how
texting,
they're using Snapchat is
there's no difference. It's actually worse. Snapchat's worse because of what can be just with the username can be searched, which is we're just dumping stuff on there and then it can be erased very quickly. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason for Snap. You're gonna get it, and they've been cool with it. Yeah. We don't allow our kids to follow anybody on let's say for TikTok that they know. My daughter will ask, well, can I follow my friend? And I say, no, you cannot, because you can text each other, you can talk to each other about what's going on in the world. I don't really need you to follow what they're following, what their parents allow them to follow. I don't need you to, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't make
layers as it begins to
it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So I know I will just walk over and say, Evie, let me see your phone. And at any point, and I will see exactly what she's doing. And then of course you have your Apple ID and the restrictions there. But at the same time, we do give her some leeway to have some control over it. But we've just been having that conversation on why. And they put up a fight, but then they get it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, we started with Instagram also. One of my children actually deleted Instagram off of their phone and got rid of their account without telling us because they knew it was a problem for them. And the same thing, another one with Twitter, because they knew that they couldn't control the addictive nature of it without ever telling us really. And I was like so proud of them for that. The conversation I think is essential, right? I mean, I'm listening to, I know the rules we have, right? We started with Be Real, we got Instagram, we have just ventured into Snapchat, but I still don't understand it. I don't like it, right? Like, and we have these conversations about it a lot. I think if I'm sitting here listening to this, like, man, we sound like three parents got a lot of rules, right? Like, why do we do this? But also what I've heard both of you say is like, they get it. We talk to them about it. It's a conversation. They have to defend it. I think that conversation with my kids about things has been really impactful, right? So in the last week, talking about the cell phone change at the high school, Eliza's not happy about it, right? She's a typical 16-year-old girl who's on their cell phone, even with the restrictions and the time limits and all the things that we have. She is not happy about the change of not having access to phone during academic time at school. And we had a conversation about it. Like, what is it? What's the app? What's the function that you feel like you can't put down for 3 hours? And does it have that much control over what's going on? And it was at times heated conversations as parents can get, right? And what the shift was for her was like, I admitted I couldn't control certain things about phones. Right. And so I think when I think about boundaries, they're not what I set because I don't want my kids to have fun or that I don't, I actually do it because I love them and I've lived through some of these experiences. We as administrators see like far more than most parents see when it comes to, right, this decisions about Snapchat and TikTok and the things that we do are because we deal with discipline around students' use of cell phones and stuff that we won't talk about and we don't talk about, but like that shaped my perspective.
100%.
Right? Shaped my decision as a parent. And so, but also the boundaries that we put in place for our kids are because of the protection for them and actually the freedom. I want them to be able to learn. And it's a gradual release, right? It's a gradual release. My daughter and your son are going to graduate at the same time. The time is running short for them to be in our home.
Right.
So how do we have these conversations to set them up to be able to make these decisions themselves? I think is one of those key parts. And Alex, I like what you said, like you didn't give them social media until you were willing to parent social media. Right. And I think about that. And it's the next question I really have, or the things to talk about for you guys is, what are some of the rules that you found to be really impactful in terms of how are you parenting cell phones? Or how are you parenting social media? A couple things, and I'm going to answer this question first before I give you guys the chance to think about what I'm asking here is, from the time we gave them cell phones, we had several basic rules. Cell phones don't go in bathrooms. Cell phones don't go in bedrooms. I don't want the distraction at night of them checking notifications and not sleeping. I also don't want access into private areas for cell phones to be. So cell phones don't go into bathrooms, cell phones don't go into bedrooms. It's been the rule all along. They charge them in a common place, right? We have a charging pad. They all put them there at night. They know that at any point in time, mom and dad are going to look at their phones, their text messages, their pictures, social media. And so there's that constant feedback loop that we have with them. The other thing is we use Apple, parent notifications or parent restrictions a lot. Right? Total cell phone time, 3 to 4 hours, whatever it is a day. Social media, no more than 2 hours a day. And my kids regularly say, nobody else has these rules. So do other kids have these rules?
Yeah.
And what are some things that you guys have in place that you think, in terms, to use your words, parenting phone use or parenting social media?
So to kind of step back a second, I think one of the things that I think about when it comes to these interactions with my own 14-year-olds is these are the internal conversations that I want them to have when they're 18 years old. Like if they can have the mindset in their thought process of the conversation that mom and dad had with me, and they're now doing that internally, that's a win.
That's
And that's
win.
and that and it's about that self-control. The most successful people in the world, regardless of how you define success, all have self-control and can and have a focus in life. And like for us and our kids, if they can have some self-control and not just, yes, it is a battle every single day. But if we know that I'm instilling a little bit of self-control, then that is going to benefit them when they get off to wherever they go when they're 18 years of age. Our kids also they're not allowed having their cell phones in their bedrooms. There's a common place to charge when they're using their cell phones. We should be able to see the screen at all times. So wherever they're seated, I need to be able to see over a shoulder. They should not be, same thing. Apple restrictions are there. And I don't go out of my way to, hunt down what they're doing. But if they give me an inkling that there's something going on, then I will.
Yeah.
But just like the cell phone policy at our school, I'm not going and hunting and looking in kids' pockets. But if I have a feeling that there's a giant cell phone shaped bulge in your pocket, then yeah, I'm going to probably, chit chat with you about that. Or if I walk in and I see it quickly a hand go into a pocket, yeah, we're going to have a conversation, and I'm not going to accuse you of anything, but you give me an inkling and we're going to have a conversation. I think the important thing is, though, and this is my wife talking, is that you have to give them control of something. So if you're going to restrict if you're going to restrict something that they do, then you need to give them something else, so that they know they have a voice in the household, and whatever that may be. And that is completely developmentally appropriate. She's a primary school, she's a first grade teacher, and she knows better than I do junior high kids that this is what you need to do. And so she's always like nudging me like, Alex, you're going to be mean about this. You got to give them something, even if it's like, what do we want to eat for dinner tonight? Right? Yeah. Something simple that they can have that control, because that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to junior high age kids. Yeah. Even teenagers and 17, 18-year-olds, they need that control because that's who they're becoming. They're controlling their lives. So give it to them.
Yeah, that share in decision making, right? Yeah. And as small or big ways. My daughter said the other day, like, are you really going to keep, parental controls on my phone when I go to college? And my answer was, my goal is no. Mm-hmm. Right? My goal is that you've learned along the way to be reflective on, like, man, I can't do that right now, or I need some self-control, right? And so there's a good stuff there. How about you, Tiffany?
Very similar to what both of you shared. We do time limits on the screen time app. Actually, some different families that I've worked with at the school, I've talked to them about different things, and I'm like, bring your phone in, let me show you how. And not very happy 5th and 6th graders sometimes the next day, but I agree. The conversations, that's definitely what's important, and giving them some hand in it. And really, I've learned most of the things that I've learned through trial and error and mistakes. And that's what I tell my boys and that's what my husband and I tell our boys is, we don't expect you to be perfect. You're going to mess up. We're just trying to reduce the blueprint of that mess up, because when you give a child complete reign of the internet or apps or anything, you're setting them up for some mistakes that could be pretty detrimental. And so I tend to, as Alex mentioned, controlling the phone. There are times where I'm like, I cannot deal with this right now. Like I'm working, or I'm trying to get ready, or I can't password everything and screen time and give you and fix. And so there are times I'm like, none of this is important enough right now. We'll deal with it later. And I'm sure that's really annoying to my kids, but I do try to make sure that we have the conversations around why you only get an hour or, of game time, or why I'm going to allow you to have a little bit more today, or, why you have to turn your phone in at 9:00. The things like that. But you guys pretty much hit. I think another one that is under probably looked at, and I was guilty as well, is just having free reign of the internet in general. Having Safari on a 5th grader's phone is a really big responsibility to give a 5th grader. And so there are ways that you can limit things, and there are ways you can approve certain websites. So at a certain point, my boys would just have to text me, can you give me access to this website? It's not that, it's completely off of there, but it's just a big responsibility to give kids free internet access to anything they want to find, because you can find anything you want, and you can only be looking for this much, and you can find a lot. So, my anxiety sometimes takes over. The worst case scenario comes in, into play. And so my husband is a great voice of reason. Like, Tiffany, they're growing. They've got to make their own mistakes. And so it's a good balance between what I've seen and know and learned, and also needing to let them be, adolescents who are growing.
So Tiffany, I was listening to you talk, and it just dawned on me the big thing that we've really honed in on, obviously trial and error as parents, are going to sleep directly after being on your phone.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to be on my phone until 10 o'clock. I'm going right to bed. Just that negativity in the brain, a lot of times, because social media a lot of times is negative, and then that's what they're going to sleep with. I mean, I think about when I was a kid, and I didn't have cell phones, but we'd watch a scary movie, then I'd have nightmares. If I read a book, a lot of times I have like these really lucid, vivid dreams, and I'm like, okay, what about my kids who are on their phones until a certain time at night, and then they go to bed? What's going on in that brain of theirs? And then compound it. That's just not one night. That is night after night after night after night after night. And then I've got grumpy 13-year-olds waking up, grumpy 14-year-olds waking up, and I'm like, why? And then it clicked, like there needs to be space for the brain to decompress. We've seen it when we were kids in a different avenue, and so that is really, really important. And it's important as again, it's a compounding thing over time. It's like it's every night of just bad sleep patterns on top of bad sleep patterns, and then Allison are like, why do we have grumpy teenagers? Well, it makes a lot of sense, and so we've restricted that, and we've seen a big difference.
This morning I just got up and thought, I'm leaving my phone by my bed, which I should probably put my phone out on the charging station too, but and got ready so much quicker this morning because I wasn't looking at email. I wasn't, texting with people, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. There's nothing on that phone I need that early. So even as adults, like you said, Isaac, I have to rein it in.
Yeah. So one of the things I think about is just we found some really good resources when we were first venturing into cell phones, right? Parent discussions. There was a cell phone contract that we had, or things that really just guided the conversation with kids. And so a resource to point parents towards is, as I've been preparing for a lot of this discussion, trying to find things that are really practical, right? There's a resource, a website called A Wired Family. They have discussion guides. They have how to tell if your kid's ready for a cell phone, how to talk to them about social media, sexting, all the things that, the conversation you should be having. Common Sense Media has some really good resources as well. And what are the practices, the things that we can agree to up front? And so if you're thinking about getting a cell phone for your kid, whether they're 12, 14, 16, whatever it may be, 10, how do you have that discussion? The last thing I just want to ask for you guys is just our framework around this. I've said this before, is kind of like we've seen sort of the negative underbelly, right? For lack of a better term, right? We've seen some of the worst in school administrations of the impact of cell phones and social media. What's one thing? What's a takeaway that you could give to parents and saying this is worth the fight, right? What's a takeaway of something you would want a parent to know about cell phones based off of the experiences that you've had as an administrator?
I would say I have two. Sorry, I
That's
said
fine.
one.
Two's
but
fine.
The first thing is consider how you are, as a parent, are impacted, and that your kids are modeling what you do. And so I could be watching a Netflix series while I'm cooking, and my kid could walk in, and I don't really say anything to them because they're just getting a drink, and that's a missed opportunity that I could have interacted with my kid, or they could have wanted to tell me something or bring up something, and I could just be distracted, and they're like, whatever, I'm not going to bother her. She's got her AirPods in or whatever. And so I think that is something that I think about often. I try to make sure that I'm modeling what I want them to be doing. And then the other thing would be, it's not too late. If you have a 16-year-old who has free reign, I think it's awesome to show your kids humility and to say, and I've done it so many times, and I do it even with me being overprotective. I have to come back to my kids and say, I'm sorry, do not know how to do this. This is my first time, parenting kids with cell phones. And they know that, and I tell them that all the time. But to say, I think I might have messed up. I think we may have given you too much responsibility that you weren't even made to be ready for. And to say, let's make some rules that are good for everyone that we feel like, and they're not going to be like, yeah, I don't think you should give me social media. They're probably not going to do that, but they might be able to come to an agreement with you, which is just a starting point and that conversation. So any little bit of agreement and move in the right direction is a good first step. I don't think it has to be all or nothing, especially if you're already a couple years into it.
It's not too late, though.
It's not too late.
Never too late to do the right thing.
Yeah.
There you go.
So real talk here, cell phones
Real
and
talk.
iPads for the little boys is a great way for me to get some me time. Like, I'll just be honest, like the 3 little boys, when I come home from work, I just want to like hole up and get on the phone myself and just kind of like give me some time. So it's like, oh, just go get on your iPads. Or, oh, Mike and Evie, the 14-year-olds, oh yeah, you can be on your phones because this is going to give me, it's going to give me some me time. But that snowballs very, very quickly. Yeah. And that me time turns to 2-3 hours. And you're like, oh man. And then it becomes the norm, and that's the expectation for our kids. And then when you start to restrict that, then they get grumpy back at you and you have that fight. But it's just saying this is not okay. Deep down inside, people, I think as parents, we know that what is happening is not okay. This is going to have to be kind of a selfless thing, or I'm going to have to give a piece of myself to my kids more than I want to right now because I just need to decompress myself. But it's you just have to. And when you do it, you see your kids are actually kids. So I like at the junior high, like when we said no cell phones during lunch, you actually saw kids. We saw children. That's what they're children. And we saw that, and it was good. And it was right. And I think sometimes we give cell phones to these kids and they turn to adults in our minds. And they're not. They are kids. They're goofy. They make decisions that are not okay sometimes. And sometimes you just shake your head and you say, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? And you're just looking at them like, but then you're like, but they're kids and they're just having fun and they're joyous and and we forget that when they're with their phones because we look at them like adults. And at least I do. I compartmentalize them into adults. And when you take that away, you start to see that vulnerability of them being a kid. And it makes a lot of sense and it's meaningful. And so for my own kids, for the kids I'm entrusted with every day, and even my little ones, when we can get away from that, obviously you're going to let them play, but when they get away from that and you can let them experience the world, you start to see them being kids. And it's good. It's a good thing. And it's the way it should be. They shouldn't be little adults walking around. They're only 14.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for your time. Being vulnerable today, right? This is not a side of Mr. Brunk and Mrs. Martin that people get to see very often, but I get to see it, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation. And so I think you're great parents, you're great administrators. I appreciate the work that you're doing every day in our district, and I'm hopeful that this is meaningful to at least one parent that sits there and says like, "Hey, I'm not alone. It's not too late. I can be vulnerable myself." And I think about the interactions I've had with my own children where I have been vulnerable and shared with them, my struggles or past struggles that led me to this place where this rule is in place for you, have been some of the most meaningful parent moments for me. And so I hope this serves as an encouragement. And I hope that we can continue to bring things like this to families across our district. We don't have it figured out. Somebody could have sat in this room and said, I have zero control of my kid's phone and they're doing okay with it, right? This is just 3 parents' perspective on this topic. And so I appreciate your time today. Appreciate you guys giving us a listen. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.